Or then again, whoever writes the history of this moment will see it as a time when a quietly compelling CEO with a paradigm-busting technology made an attempt to inject a very peculiar worldview into the global mind stream. From an unmarked four-story headquarters, San Francisco's Mission District, to the entire world. For Altman and his company, ChatGPT and GPT-4 are merely stepping stones along the way to achieving a simple and seismic mission, one these technologists may as well have branded on their flesh. That mission is to build artificial general intelligence, a concept that's so far been grounded more in science fiction than science, and to make it safe for humanity. The people who work at OpenAI are fanatical in their pursuit of that goal. Though, as any number of conversations in the office cafe will confirm, the Build AGI bit of the mission seems to offer up more raw excitement to its researchers than the Make It Safe bit. There are people who do not shy from casually using the term superintelligence. They assume that AI's trajectory will surpass whatever peak biology can attain. The company's financial documents even stipulate a kind of exit contingency for when AI wipes away our whole economic system. It's not fair to call OpenAI a cult, but when I asked several of the company's top brass if someone could comfortably work there if they didn't believe AGI was truly coming, and that its arrival would mark one of the greatest moments in human history, most executives didn't think so. Why would a non-believer want to work here? They want. The assumption is that the workforce, now at approximately 500, though it might have grown since you began reading this paragraph, has self-selected to include only the faithful. At the very least, as Altman puts it, once you get hired, it seems inevitable that you'll be drawn into the spell. At the same time, OpenAI is not the company it once was. It was founded as a purely non-profit research operation, but today most of its employees technically work for a profit-making entity that is reportedly valued at almost $30 billion. Altman and his team now face the pressure to deliver a revolution in every product cycle in a way that satisfies the commercial demands of investors and keeps ahead in a fiercely competitive landscape, all while hewing to a quasi-messianic mission to elevate humanity rather than exterminate it. That kind of pressure, not to mention the unforgiving attention of the entire world, can be a debilitating force. The Beatles set off colossal waves of cultural change, but they anchored their revolution for only so long. 6 years after chiming that unforgettable chord, they weren't even a band anymore. The maelstrom OpenAI has unleashed will almost certainly be far bigger. But the leaders of OpenAI swear they'll stay the course. All they want to do, they say, is build computers smart enough and safe enough to end history, thrusting humanity into an era of unimaginable bounty. Growing up in the late 80s and 90s, Sam Altman was a nerdy kid who gobbled up science fiction and Star Wars. The worlds built by early sci-fi writers often had humans living with, or competing with, superintelligent AI systems. The idea of computers matching or exceeding human capabilities thrilled Altman, who had been coding since his fingers could barely cover a keyboard. When he was 8, his parents bought him a Macintosh LCI. One night he was up late playing with it, and a thought popped into his head. Someday this computer is going to learn to think. When he arrived at Stanford as an undergrad in 2003, he hoped to help make that happen and took courses in AI. But it wasn't working at all, he'd later say. The field was still mired in an innovation trough known as AI winter. Altman dropped out to enter the startup world. His company, Loop, was in the tiny first batch of wannabe organizations in Y Combinator, which would become the world's most famed incubator. In February 2014, Paul Graham, YC's founding guru, chose then 28-year-old Altman to succeed him. Sam is one of the smartest people I know, Graham wrote announcement, and understands startups better than perhaps anyone I know, including myself. But Altman saw YC as something bigger than a launchpad for companies. We are not about startups, he told me soon after taking roles. We are about innovation because we believe that is how you make the future great for everyone. In Altman's view, the point of cashing in on all those unicorns was not to pack the partners' wallets, but to fund species-level transformations. He began a research wing. hoping to fund ambitious projects to solve the world's biggest problems. But AI in his mind was the one realm of innovation to rule the a superintelligence that could address humanity's problems better than humanity could. As luck would have it, Altman assumed his new job as AI winner was turning into an abundant spring. Computers were now performing amazing feats, be it learning in neural networks like labeling photos, translating text, and optimizing sophisticated ad networks. The advances convinced him that for the first time, AGI was actually within reach. Leaving it in the hands of big corporations, however, worried him. He felt those companies would be too fixated on their products to seize the opportunity to develop AGI as soon as possible. And if they did create AGI, they might recklessly unleash it upon them without the necessary precautions. At the time, Altman had been thinking about running for governor of California. But he realized that he was perfectly positioned to do something big, to lead a company that would change humanity itself. AGI was going to get built exactly once, he told me in 2021. And there were not that many people that could do a good job running OpenAI. I was lucky to have a set of experiences in my life that made me really positively set up for this. Altman began talking to people who might help him start a new kind of AI company, a nonprofit that would direct the field toward responsible AGI. One kindred spirit was Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. As Musk would later tell CNBC, he had become concerned about AI's impact after having some marathon discussions with Google co-founder Larry Page. Musk said he was dismayed that Page had little concern for safety and also seemed to regard the rights of robots as equal to humans. When Musk shared his concerns, Page accused him of being a species. Musk also understood that, at the time, Google employed much of the world's AI talent. He was willing to spend some money for an effort more amenable to Team Human. Within a few months, Altman had raised money from Musk, who pledged $100 million, and his time, and Red Hoffman, who donated $10 million. Other funders included Peter Thiel, Jessica Livingston, Amazon Web Services, and YC Research. Altman began to stealthily recruit a team. He limited the search to AGI believers, a constraint that narrowed his options. Brockman, the chief technology officer of Stripe, was one such person, and he agreed to be OpenAI CTO. Another key co-founder would be Andrej Karpathy, who had been at Google Brain, the search giant edge AI research operation. But perhaps Altman's most sought after target was a Russian-born engineer named Ilya Sutskever. Sutskever's pedigree was unassailable. His family had emigrated from Russia to Israel, then to Canada. At the University of Toronto, he had been a standout student under Geoffrey Hinton, known as the godfather of modern AI, for his work on deep learning and neural networks. Hinton, who is still close to Sutskever, marvels at his protege's wizardry. Early in Sutskever's tenure at the lab, Hinton had given him a complicated project. Sutskever got tired of writing code to do the requisite calculations, and he told Hinton it would be easier if he wrote a custom programming language for the task. Hinton got a bit annoyed and tried to warn his student away from what he assumed would be a month-long distraction. Then Sutskever came clean. I did it this morning. Sutskever became an AI superstar, co-authoring a breakthrough that showed how AI could learn to recognize images simply by being exposed to huge volumes of data. He ended up happily as a key scientist on the Google Brain team. In mid-2015, Altman cold emailed Sutskever to invite him to dinner with Musk, Brockman, and others at the swank Rosewood Hotel on Palo Alto's Sand Hill Road. Only later did Sutskever figure out that he was the guest of honor. It was kind of a general conversation about AI and AGI in the future, he says. More specifically, they discussed whether DeepMind were so far ahead that it would be impossible to catch up to them, or whether it was still possible to, as Elon put it. create a lab which would be a counterbalance. While no one at the dinner explicitly tried to recruit Suitskever, the conversation hooked him. Suitskever wrote an email to Altman soon after, saying he was game to lead the project, but it got stuck in his drafts folder. Altman circled back, and after months fending off Google's counteroffers, Suitskever signed on. He would soon become the soul of the company and its driving force in research. Suitskever joined Altman and Musk in recruiting people to the project, culminating in a Napa Valley retreat where several prospective OpenAI researchers fueled each other's excitement. Of course, some targets would resist the lure. John Carmack, the legendary game encoder behind Doom, Quake, and countless other titles, declined an Altman pitch. OpenAI officially launched in December 2015. At the time, when I interviewed Musk and Altman, they presented the project to me as an effort to make AI safe and accessible by sharing it with the world. In other words, open source. OpenAI, they told me, was not going to apply for patents. Everyone could make use of their breakthroughs. Wouldn't that be empowering some future doctor? I wondered. Musk said that was a good question. But Altman had an answer. Humans are generally good, and because OpenAI would provide powerful tools for that vast majority, the bad actors would be overwhelmed. He admitted that if Dr. Evil were to use the tools to build something that couldn't be counteracted, then we're in a really bad place. But both Musk and Altman believed that the safer course for AI would be in the hands of a research operation, not polluted by the profit motive, a persistent temptation to ignore the needs of humans in the search for thoughtful quarterly results. Altman cautioned me not to expect results soon. This is going to look like a research lab for a long time, he said. There was another who tamped down expectations. Google and the others have been developing and applying AI for years. While OpenAI had $1 billion committed, largely via Musk, an ace team of researchers and engineers, and a lofty mission, it had no clue about to pursue its goals. Altman remembers a moment when the small team gathered in Brockman's apartment. They didn't have an office yet. I was like, what should we do? Altman remembers a moment when the small team gathered in Brockman's apartment. They didn't have an office. I was like, what should we do? I had breakfast in San Francisco with Brockman a little more than a year after OpenAI founded. For the CTO of a company with the word open in its name, he was pretty parsimonious with details. He did it that the nonprofit could afford to draw on its initial $1 billion donation for a while. The salaries of the 25 people on its staff, who were being paid at far less than market value, ate up the bulk of OpenAI expenses. The goal for us, the thing that we're really pushing on, he said, is to have the systems that can do things that humans were not capable of doing before. But for the time being, what that looked like was a bunch of researchers publishing papers. After the interview, I walked into the company's newish office in the Mission District, but he allowed me to go no further than the vestibule. He did duck into a closet to get me a t-shirt. Had I gone in and asked around, I might have learned exactly how much OpenAI was floundering. Brockman now admits that nothing was working. Its researchers were sending algorithmic spaghetti toward the ceiling to see what stuck. They delved into systems that solved video games and spent considerable effort on robotics. We knew what we wanted to do, says Altman. We knew why we wanted to do it, but we had no idea how. But they believed. Supporting their optimism were the steady improvements in artificial neural networks that use deep learning techniques. The general idea is, don't bet against deep learning, says Suitskever. Chasing GI, he says, wasn't totally crazy. It was only